Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final week. This week, I am presenting on stress management for medical professionals. I'm choosing to focus on this topic for a couple reasons. First, I myself am a medical professional. I am a CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant, and I've worked in post-acute rehab, and I now work in an acute hospital setting. I've had experience working in ED, in the intensive care unit and on our telemetry unit. And the second reason why I'm choosing to focus on this is because I have two loved ones who are firefighters. One being my dad, who just retired, and the other being my brother, who is just starting his career. And my whole life, I grew up with having a firefighter dad. So I got to witness what it was like being the daughter of a first responder. And I observed some ways that he coped healthily and unhealthily. And as I stepped into my own role a few years ago, beginning working in the medical field, I started realizing that I was picking up on some of his coping mechanisms, but also I was having my own, and I was recognizing they weren't all healthy. So I really wanted to focus on this particular topic to help me understand my family members, but also to help me help myself find some better coping mechanisms for my current life. Healthcare professionals, firefighters, paramedics, doctors, nurses, nursing aides, and any other patient care providers. This could also include therapists, social workers, anyone who is in the care profession. Common stressors, especially with the professions I just listed, our jobs are high demand, meaning they ask a lot of us for a long period of time. They're fast paced. You have to have time management skills. Often our work is critical. It's life-saving, life or death. And if we don't know what we're doing or we don't do it fast enough, then someone could get seriously hurt or lose their life. There's a lot of responsibility that can be carried on the shoulders of a first responder. And with that comes extra stress. Being understaffed is something I've experienced working in dangerous conditions. Sleep deprivation, especially for firefighters who can get called at any hour of the day, multiple times throughout the day, and they don't know what the call is going to be until they get it, and they don't know how long it's going to last, and they don't know if they're going to be able to really rest right afterwards or not, unless they are off the clock. Long shifts. I work 12s. My brother and my dad, 24s or 48s, or sometimes even longer. Outside of work, you're bringing in potentially the stresses of everything else that's happening in life. It's very hard to separate work from outside of work life. Increased exposure to trauma, injury, and illness. When I first began working, it was a huge wake-up call, and the conditions I was working in weren't even emergent. They were in long-term care, but I still faced huge amounts of stress with the new exposure to illness. And workplace hostility. This isn't the case for everywhere, but I have experienced it. I have loved ones who have experienced it. I currently have a loved one who is experiencing it, and my heart just breaks for him because it is extremely stressful to have hostility in an environment with people that you will have to trust with your life when you get a call. Types of stress and the effects of stress. Different types of stress include acute, episodic, and chronic, which I will cover in the next couple slides. And why is it important to consider stress levels on and off the job? Especially when it comes to first responders, stress impacts mental and emotional health, decision-making, and work performance, and overall well-being. But when it comes to first responders, if their stress is not under control, they might not be thinking clearly. When it is prime time, they need to be thinking clearly so that they don't make a life-threatening mistake. How stress affects the body. I won't say everything on this slide. I will let you guys look because there's quite a bit. But this is just an example of how much it affects, because stress really does affect the entire body: brain, cardiovascular, muscles and joints, immune system, skin, gut, and reproductive system. This does not even include, well, brain, yes, but mental health. We're talking about how you are perceiving life, the world, how you feel about yourself. All of these internal emotions are also wrapped up in how stress can affect the body if it is not handled properly. The impacts of stress. So here I'll go over each of the 3 types of stress. First, starting with acute. Acute is stress that comes temporarily, either in anticipation, during, or after a stressful event. It can actually be positive, as it causes that fight or flight or freeze reaction, but it prompts their body to gear up for something and move or step away or protect. That's a natural response in our body. The long-term effect, if happening over and over again, can be physical and mental fatigue. And this is also where it ties back into importance for first responders to be aware of acute stressors, because over time it can cause mental fatigue and they need to be on top of it with their job. Symptoms can include anger, irritability, tension headaches, dizziness, IBS, elevated blood pressure, shortness of breath, and more. This is just a fraction of the list that I found. And then episodic is acute stress over and over and over again. So this is what it's like for medical professionals. They have acute stress continually. Every time they work, they're going to be facing acute stressors. And the symptoms of a long-term episodic is being short-tempered, tense, nervous energy, abrupt, feeling or acting rushed, hostile or hostility, chest pains, being irritable, being anxious, and more. So you think of the first responder lifestyle, that's hard. That is hard to not let your attitude be impacted by your stress response in your daily life. And this can affect, if stress is not handled within the workplace, it can affect your outside life and relationships. So all the more reason to learn how to cope with your stressors that you are guaranteed going to have to face if you're in the medical field. And then first responders might have a difficult time receiving care. How many times have we heard that the hardest patients are the nurse or the doctor who think they know better and they don't want to be helped, or they don't know they're unaware of the harmful effects of their stress. They think, oh, I've lived with it for so long. I've coped with it this way for so long. It's no big deal. They just brush it off, even if it still is having harmful effects. And lastly, we have chronic. So this is different than acute and episodic stress. It's more long-term. It's based on being submerged in an environment that is stressful conditions, long-term exposure. And chronic stress isn't so much of the thrilling nature like acute stress is. And you can still experience acute stress or those bursts of stress with new situations, even if you have chronic stress. But with chronic stress, it can lead to feeling numbed out because you're so stressed all the time that you don't even realize you're stressed, but your body is still reacting and having a stress response. And it can be, this is a telltale sign of this is when you go on vacation and you have the hardest time unwinding. And then you almost wish to be back in the environment that you worked so hard to break away from, to take a breather. I've definitely experienced this. Usually in my life, I'm going on vacation, it's got to be a week or more because I need at least 2 to 3 days to actually unwind and to realize I'm on vacation, and then I can start to actually enjoy myself. The impacts of stress. This is a quote, and this is also where I got the information for acute, episodic, and chronic stress. But this was very telling. And this is an article, and it says chronic stress increases the risk of major depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders, including age-related dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease. Studies have shown that stress management can reduce cortisol response during stress by improving coping skills, thus improving the quality of life. So there you have that connection with chronic stress and serious mental disorders that can really diminish quality of life near the end of life. And if you learn how to cope healthily with stress early on, then it can improve your quality of life in the long run. Unhealthy coping mechanisms. This is a list that I put together from literally what I have experienced either in observing others or myself. And that includes smoking, drinking, or other substance drug abuse that becomes habitual, overeating or stress eating, or the opposite, not eating enough, numbing out instead of actually resting. This, for some people, might look like coming home and watching TV or movies for hours and hours and hours, or just being on their screens for long periods of time. But you really have to ask yourself, is that truly giving your body and brain rest, or are you just numbing out? And then isolation or emotional and social withdrawal. This could just be from feeling so fatigued that you feel like you do not have the brain capacity to talk with people or spend time with people, or you're so stressed with whatever's on your plate that you cancel plans and miss out on stuff when you don't have to, because there's a time for rest, but also good quality community and social time can actually be so life-giving and can help you think of something else other than the stresses of work. Coping methods. This is from our textbook, Stress and Resilience. And these are the different coping methods. So you have problem-focused strategies, which includes problem solving and cognitive restructuring, or as I like to say, just changing your perspective on the situation so you realize it's not as stressful as it might have initially seemed. Avoidant or disengagement strategies. So this is watching TV for hours and hours. That's distraction. There's cognitive distraction and active distraction. There's denial or emotional containment. This can be really dangerous if you're holding in all of your stresses. Really, that can lead to some serious issues. That could lead to suicidal thoughts if you're bottling everything up. Humor, which can be appropriate in some circumstances and inappropriate in others, but that can definitely help. I have experienced that when it's used in the right way. And drug use. And then emotion-focused strategies. Emotional expression, this is talking to someone or writing it out in a journal, doing anything that helps you get your emotions out. There's other blame and self-blame, which are not always helpful. Rumination, also focusing on the past, wishing things could be different, which includes wishful thinking, and then passive resignation. And then you have social support. This is where family, friends, relationships, churches, support groups, whatever communities that you're in, you want to have a good social support that you can lean on, especially when stress is on the rise. And this is also helpful if you are in the medical field or first responder, to have a relationship with another person who's in that environment so that you can talk and you know exactly what the other person is talking about. They know what you're talking about. They can relate to you on a different level. This is extremely helpful. And then religion. This is internal, or like your personal faith and belief, and or external community, religiosity, which could be going to your church group or another person who shares that faith, and coming together and seeing your stress and it's on your mind in light of your faith. Coping mechanisms and mitigating stress. So this is a continuation of the last slide, but it can all kind of be summed up into 3 categories. And I like to say, check your perceptions, your people, and your parameters. So the first one, perceptions. Are you perceiving the stressor correctly? Is it actually as stressful as it seems? Is your response appropriate to it? Is there something you can do to minimize the stress if you're potentially having a stress response that's too great for the stressor? Or even vice versa. Are you not being stressed enough for the situation at hand? This is important also for first responders. Are they not really reacting in the speed and intensity that they need to for the circumstances at hand? People, this is all about community and your support network. And then parameters, knowing your limitations, because stress is that feeling that whatever is on your plate is too much for you to handle. So you have got to be realistic about how much can you actually handle. And this is all about, especially in the workplace, being humble enough to say, I need help. We got to work as a team. I'm not supposed to do this all on my own. I will do as much as I'm able. I'm going to do my very best, but I know that I need help. And that is the best way to go about it. Otherwise, you are going to reach a place of burnout, and that is not what we want.